I would love for you to read the title poem, The Animated Universe for us.
Okay. Woo. The Animated Universe for 8th graders at City School of the Arts. What if I were to tell you that I am you, that your face is my mirror? What if we're all infinite expressions of one beloved, that we, my friends, are multidimensional masterpieces? What if I were you, with your ancestors ghosting through my veins, housing your past life pains instead of mine? If I had the sweet and sour privilege of ambling in your dress rehearsals of skins across the cosmos, if I were the only you in all the animated universe, then would I arrive at your exact missteps? What if my failure to understand you is my folly? What if it is possible to be broken and still whole, brilliant fissures of light leaking up and through? What if vulnerability is our best armor, our iron? What if pristine planets with pure beings do exist, but we chose this evolutionary planet of hard rocks? What if the assignment is to forget ourselves into remembrance, to love unconditionally in the muck, to spiral up from our primordial depths? What if we chose all of this anyhow, our wonderfully shitty parents, hurdles, backhands, and crash landings? What if the Most High indwells in the lowly and far flung, and from the reaches of hell, we can still be each other's angels? Friends, friends, if I were to tell you all of this, would you believe me? Or would you nod and say, I know?
Hey, welcome to Brown Girl Book Lover. I'm Leslie Ann Murray. Today we have the lovely Samantha Thornhill from Trinidad. Booyaka, booyaka. She is a globally traveled poet, educator, and children's author from, Trinidad and Tobago. After graduating with her MFA in poetry from the University of Virginia, Samantha served for a decade as a poetry professor at the Juilliard School in New York City, the author of almost a dozen children's books. I didn't know that about you. And The Animated Universe is Samantha's debut poetry collection. Samantha, welcome to Brown Girl Book Lover.
Thank you for having me. I'm here with the Animated Universe, Leslie Ann. It is so wonderful to finally, get to talk with you in real time and to hear your laugh, which I've been stalking on TikTok past month, to be able to be in the presence of that. So thank you. It's great to be here.
Thank you for joining me. Tell us about The Animated Universe. For a good title, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. This book has changed when it was just a manuscript, it changed titles many times. And when the Animated Universe came to me, it was like a door closed. And it was like, that's it. Like, I'm not changing this again. And I didn't feel that assurance with the other titles. So thank you for that. I always loved poetry books that you can pick off of a shelf and open to any page and have an experience without reading the poem before or after, that each poem is its own universe. And with the advent of theme books, like such as Thomas and Beulah, which was my teacher Rita Dove's book that came out in 1984, it was like poetry books started to sort of move like novels, where there was a theme and there was an arc. And I think that, my poetry book has an arc if you read it from cover to cover, but I always enjoyed poetry books that you can just open anywhere, almost like a form of divination. And so I believe that every poem is its own animated universe. I believe that all of us are our own animated universe, hence the drawing. And I believe that everything in this, I believe in the powers and the magical powers of inanimate objects. So you'll find that in this book that, anything from chalk to an apron can become something enlivened.
It's a, I love talking about to poets because when you ask them to say something, it's always poetry. You're like, you're like everyone's an animated universe.
We're all our own. I see it in everyone. I see the light in people's eyes and wonder, what's that about? And so that's why I love poetry. It's a way in which we can connect with people's inner realities and inner worlds. And it's a privilege to know how the mind works and how it works its way through images and thoughts, feelings, memories. It's a fascinating craft.
You were talking about the like in you believe everything has an animated universe and from chalk to like let's say flowers like plastic flowers. And when I was reading, there's one poem you have about chalk and I would love for you to read it and if you can help me unpack it because I was like, "Oh, I think I understand this, but what does it mean?" And so like I was in the train station in the train a little bit perplexed. And I
Mm,
wanted to like what what does this mean? What I'm getting all these feelings, right?
mhm.
And
Okay.
I think poetry sometimes like you don't have to anchor down in one feeling, which I love about it, but it's like I'm like, wait, what was that? You know? And I
Oh,
love that. I was just like, do I need to understand this more? Do I need to come back to it? So as soon
ooh,
as you said
okay.
that, I thought about it. I thought about that poem. It's not
That's
even
so
my second
delightful. You felt stirred, but it's like but you still had questions and you weren't sure. It's like that battle between the intellect and intuition when it comes to reading. The intellect might not understand something that the intuition does, and it gets kind of like a discordance because like I'm feeling something, but I don't know what I'm supposed to be thinking about it. And I love that. I love when a poem can bypass the intellect, which can only compute a fraction of our reality, actually.
Oh, you're such a teacher. I love that. I was like, oh, you get it. Like,
Totally get it. And I encounter poetry that does that, and it's amazing to hear that some of mine are doing the same. And truth be told, I had a couple family members tell me, the poems that are stories I get, your other poems, you know, I don't always know what they're saying to me, but I felt something, and maybe that's enough.
I think so.
So we have Ode to Chalk. You want me to just read it? And
Yes, please.
okay, so this poem is in memory of my grandmother, who was a school teacher, Enid Thornhill. Ode to Chalk. Remember that summer school I started in my room with your help, 10 and poised before the rickety blackboard, brandishing you like a palmo, my wand of talc and granulated grit. I admit my delight at the destruction of your full moon face with a single swan dive of my wrist. What was it about your arrhythmic sound of a dice throw down that so galvanized my glee as you rocked my bow-legged blackboard with the scratch and squeak of your grind? One detention, saddled down with bucket and sponge to wash every board whistle clean. I learned this much. You name names. Your siren song on the lime green board at Juilliard could turn every sound in a room to stone. Sword. Perhaps like you, we come in rainbows and make our marks just to experience the paradoxical kiss where erasure meets eternity. Here to dance, impart, weep, and bleed down the black. Pillar of poise, limestone lady, in the realms of remembrance, you are difficult to erase. Pinched between thumb and index, your tap sequence, Morse code, Granny's ghost, theater mice sneezing into their coats, and how you break so sonorously into multitudes. I depart my classroom's Cheek Street, your ashes smudging my lifelines, mountaintops kissed with your first snows. You, cylindrical companion, shark's tooth, moonbeam of my teachings, you have been torch, baton, hope in the hand of the enslaved. Your remains are the true contents of the hourglass. Ode to Chalk.
That is that is such like a beautiful last line. And now when you read it, I think, it's these two things playing with each other. It's this physical object and this physical person who has departed. And both of them mean something very different, and both of them are connected, even though we don't see the connection. Ah.
Yes, yes. Pablo Neruda is I call him my baby daddy of poetry because he was a lover and a writer of the ode.
Mm.
And what I learned through this container of a poem is that, and I do this with my students, I walk into class with a tomato and put it on the table, tell them write about this tomato for 20 minutes. I don't know, like, what? But that singular focus on this object, which is the meditation. It creates a container for the universe to enter because nothing exists in a silo. Like everything is connected to something. There's memory, there's sounds, there's sonics, there's sensory stuff. There's, so if you contemplate something for long enough, it begins to transcend itself. Okay, so I'm going to read a poem called Jezebel's Song. Jezebel always wore the same pantyhose to mass, jet black with a control top and a run as long as the Amazon. Gelatinous mounds shifting as she traipsed the cathedral in her Sunday best. Jezebel winked at the men with her left eye, their wives with her right, and kissed every baby. Peppermint lips, cool ocean floors. I would count each click of her Saturday night heels. "You're studying your maths?" she asked me once. Under the heating lamp of my mother's gaze, I turned my face into Mummy's paisley hip. Whenever Jesus's body slipped gingerly into her mouth, I held my breath to hear the sound of his sizzle. I thought it was just me until once even the organ hushed. Rumor said Jezebel could actually sing her ass off. Transforming a broomstick into a microphone once at the gingerbread house the wives called that place. I felt like a lion in tall fever grass waiting for Jezebel's eruption into a smoky song. But she didn't even sing Our Father, just hummed and swayed, hummed and swayed. Her bee music reminded me of the mellifluous women locked inside my uncle's speaker box, their voices curving mountain roads. Whenever Jezebel didn't balance in on the sun's rays, Sundays weren't quite so bold-faced. No pantyhose run snaking down legs and pigeon-toed stroll, scuffed dancing shoes, thick custard grin. No altar boys longing to taste February on her breath, or wives with cut eye that could sharpen pencils. And there was a gaggle of us girls who would reach home, dust off our mother's high heels, licking red pistachio shells just for the lipstick.
Oh, wow.
Don't tell me you didn't do that too.
That was, wow. I didn't even see this poem because like as I like to read poems just like, yeah, what is calling me, what is calling me.
Yes, so that every time you're rediscovering, oh shoot, there's something about passing something to get to something else and then circling back on something you missed, and like it becomes like a new treasure. Like, oh, how did I miss that? I love that. I love that you're reading the book that way. It makes me so happy.
Can you just tell us quickly about Jezebel's Song?
Oh my gosh, I always had this lasting memory of this hussy that used to come to church, and I wrote this poem with this remembrance in mind, this lady back home who used to, cause this stir. When I was around the time I was writing the poem, I asked my mother about, I didn't know the lady's name, but I asked my mother about the woman that used to come to church, and my mother had no idea what I was talking about. She was like, "What woman?" I was like, "Mommy," and I was describing, and my mom just did not. It was like we were in two different realities. So the poem remains a mystery. why it's even here, because my mother doesn't seem to know why. And I guess one day but maybe one day she'll come back to me in my mind's eye and tell me, well, go on,
Mhm.
because to my mother, she's a phantom and a figment of my imagination. And to me, she was very real. So,
But sometimes I think in the childscape, there are people who like shine so bright for you, but for adults they can't see them, right? I remember growing up in, Lockett, there was this one woman who used to just run through our neighborhood. And this is a time when women weren't running or jogging. So she was a mystery to me. And one day I convinced my cousins and friends to let's follow her. We followed her up and down, like, because I was like, what is she doing? Who is she? Why is she here? Why is she running? But I don't think the adults would remember this woman. But my friends and I remembered it. And because we went on an adventure with this woman, right? So, um, one more thing before we finish. Tell us, like, I've been asking poets, like, what does poetry mean to you? And if you can tell us, like, what does poetry mean to you, and why is it so important for your lifeline?
oh my gosh. Ugh, what does poetry mean to me? Hmm. There's been many discussions in the past. As someone that performs work, and I exist on the page and off the page, and on the page I exist like simultaneously in both worlds. But I've been asked at times to choose, and so there's this idea of like poetry being this literary thing, and then there's spoken word being this performative thing. And I actually think that for me, poetry is a performance of my interiority.
Mm.
Know what's going on in here, until I make a stage of the page for myself.
Mm.
And so my interiority is like a sleeping beast until the poem touches it. Then it comes alive and I understand what I'm saying to myself.
Mm.
So that's poetry is how I perform for myself, understanding my self-awareness and for my self-discovery and transformation.
Samantha, my Trinity sister,
Steve?
my girl, the person who's been orbiting my world for many years, even if you didn't know it. I am so happy that you joined me, that you taught me, that you made me laugh. Thank you so much for like sharing your kids, your poems, and your laughter with me.
Leslie, and thank you for sharing your platform with me and with all of us that are looking for new books and new authors that reflect our realities and show us something new. Um, Thank you for having me and for your laughter and for your questions and for your listening.
Oh, it's much appreciated.